All right, welcome back. We are here for our continued study of Exodus. We're going to be doing chapters 9 and 10 tonight. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to get on. Man, I've had a pretty long and rewarding day. I got to say, I'm feeling the same effects that I think a lot of people are with this COVID stuff, though. I was down below, back down, actually down to my weight when I got married, which was 295. Hey, Brian. And hey, wife. And I don't know, maybe eating out too much or just so excited to be able to get on my computer and do some work that I just am too tired to do when I'm teaching, and maybe spent too much time on it. But I've gained a lot of it back. I'm over 300 again, and not excited about that. So today I went for a walk with the dog. Got back out in the garden. I planted some tomatoes and okra with the kids. That was fun. They got to help me plant the seeds and everything. My wife is taking care of me. She got me a salad tonight. It was a good Caesar salad. So welcome, Tom, Tim, Mom. But anyway, I'm going to really focus in the mornings when I get up. No electronics for me before lunch. I'm going to get up. Dog and I are going to go for walks and hopefully eventually runs. And I'm really going to get back into that physical stuff and try not to eat as much. I just haven't felt good, and I'm pretty sure that that's a large part of it's just gaining too much weight back. So anyway, I'm going to push that, and then got a little bit of training done. We got to have 18 hours of in service every year to keep our certification here in Tennessee. So I did some of that training and some work type stuff, and happy to get that done. The wife gave me some time to do that, so very thankful for that. But anyway, I'm feeling a good kind of tired because of all the physical labor, and I like to keep that. I like that feeling. I like feeling that kind of tired, and so I'm probably going to try to keep that up every day. You'll have to keep me honest on that. So if you hear some pika in the background, little bits up here watching some Pokemon, so just kind of ignore that, and hopefully it's not so loud that y'all can't hear me. But anyway, we're going to do Exodus chapter 9 and 10 tonight. We're going to still continue to compare the plagues, the 10 plagues. Hey, Arthur. We're going to continue to, Rachel, compare those plagues to the Egyptian gods, that God is not only demonstrating his power to the Egyptians. You found the verse discrepancy was just the chapter divides. Okay, that's good. Glad to hear that, Brian. Yeah, because those chapters and verses, those are all man-made anyway. Those don't count as authorized or inspired anything. They're just there to kind of help us when we do it, kind of like a reference type thing. So I'm glad you found that. But anyway, we're gonna see God's power not just shown to the Egyptians, but God's power over the Egyptian gods. That Pharaoh started this whole thing off by saying, Jehovah, I don't know who Jehovah is. And so God's like, all right, you want to know who I am? This is who I am. I'm a God that's far more powerful than all of your hand-carved idols that don't really do anything. Hey, Rosalind, welcome aboard. So anyway, I'll be reading out of the King James, have the ESV up for some English, from some modern English type stuff. We are going to look at a couple of Hebrew words tonight, and I pulled up a couple of the Egyptian gods just to notice an interesting set of words and phrases, and just kind of look at the Egyptian culture of the time. So I have a number of different tabs pulled up on my computer tonight. So you'll have to bear with me as I click through them. All right, so let's get started. Verse 1. And then Jehovah said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh and tell him, Thus saith Jehovah God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if thou refuse to let them go, and will hold them still, behold, the hand of Jehovah is upon thy cattle, which is in the field, upon the horses, upon the asses, upon the camels, upon the oxen, upon the sheep. There shall be a very grievous murrain, or a plague. And Jehovah shall sever between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt, and there shall be nothing die of all that is the children of Israel. And Jehovah appointed a set time, saying, Tomorrow Jehovah shall do this this thing in the land. So here we have, again, a division is made between the Hebrew people. They get to keep all of their cattle, all of their sheep and cows, and all of their beasts of burden and everything. And God is only going to affect the Egyptian property at this time. And the gods that were in charge of this, there's four of them. These are Egyptian gods associated with the cattle or with the beasts of burden, the domesticated herd beast kind of thing. We're talking cows and camels and all that is. Ptah, Nevis, Hathor, which is probably the most famous of all of those, and Ammon, which is pretty famous too. I know Hathor and Ammon just from memory. So, but these are the Egyptian deities associated with livestock and with food and with plenty and all of that kind of stuff. And so God is going to be showing his power over essentially the property and the food of the Egyptians at this point in time. So let's see here. Ammon-Ra, yes, that's right. So verse 6, and Jehovah did that thing on the morrow, and all the cattle of Egypt died, but of the cattle of the children of Israel died not one. So here we have all of the cattle of Egypt. Hey Gary, welcome aboard. We're in Exodus 9 verse 6. So I want you to pay attention to this because the Bible says that all of the cattle of Egypt died. Because we're going to deal with one of those alleged contradictions here in a minute. And that word for cattle is miknah in Hebrew. And it stands for cattle, cows, sheep, goats, donkeys, anything that's a kind of a herd beast or a beast of burden type thing. Yeah, livestock. Thank you, Brian. That's the word I was looking for. Welcome aboard, Stephen. So, all of them. This plague wipes them all out, but it doesn't touch any of the Israelites. So verse 7, and Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of the cattle of the Israelites dead, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. And again, remember, we've talked about this a couple of times. Pharaoh is hardening his own heart. It's his choice. It's his responsibility. But God is said to be hardened in his heart by the plagues that he sends and the words that he gives to Moses and Aaron to speak. And so God's cause with Pharaoh's effect, there's a cause and effect relationship here, but God's cause is secondary. It's not overwhelming. It is not something that Pharaoh can resist or can fail to resist. He can resist. He can choose to let the people go at any point in time. He can do this, but Pharaoh he hardens his heart. He's a stubborn man, and you're going to see some changes are going to start to happen with Pharaoh. He's going to start to compromise, but he doesn't fully let the people go until the very end, when God brings on him the thing that he brought on to the people at the beginning when all of this got started. Hey Ben, welcome aboard. We're in Exodus chapter 9. All right. So, hey Wilberta, glad you are here with us. Verse 8, and Jehovah said unto Moses and unto Aaron, take to you handfuls of ashes of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it toward the heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. And it shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains, that's sores, upon man and upon beast. Now that word beast there is behemoth. It's a generic word, behemoth. It's not the behemoth of Job chapter 40, which was a specific creature, but this is just the Hebrew word for the beast of the field. And so remember, there's no cattle left. The Egyptians didn't have any cattle, didn't have any livestock at all. And so this is affecting like their dogs and their cats and all of their more wilder animals. Remember, the Egyptians revered cats and whatnot. The other thing that's interesting to note about this is that there's no communication that takes place at this point. Moses and Aaron had gone to talk to Pharaoh about the cattle. Go in and tell Pharaoh and tell him in verse 1. But right after the cattle die, Jehovah just tells Moses and Aaron do this thing. Here's the next plague. We're not even going to talk to him this time. He gets 2 plagues for rejecting. And so they take the dust in their hand, or the ashes from the furnace, and stood before Pharaoh. And Moses sprinkled it up toward heaven, and it became the boil, breaking forth with blains or sores upon man and upon beast, upon behemoth. And this is a plague specifically targeting their healers, their gods of life and of medicine. Particularly, you have Sekhmet, who was kind of a cat god. She was a warrior goddess and a goddess of healing. She was depicted as a cat or a lion. And so, you have this idea, hey Tracy, of the beasts or the sacred animals in this. If you break down what all animals are left to the Egyptians, a lot of those are going to be the cats. And so that she's attacked, and then Serapis and Imhotep. Now Imhotep is interesting because Imhotep started off, he was an actual person. Historically, he was a physician. And he was from very early on in Egyptian history. Some people think from the 3rd dynasty. And he became venerated as a deity through the channel of ancestor worship. So you have this guy who was very well liked. Of course, the name Imhotep is made famous by the Mummy movies. I don't know if any of y'all have seen those, but Imhotep was a man who was revered by the Egyptians as a doctor, as a healer, and then they began to worship him in the sense of an ancestor worship. There was a cult that came up around him, and eventually he was exalted up to deity status, full deity status, and they began to worship him. But he is essentially, Imhotep is the god of doctors for the Egyptians. Hey Lisa, welcome aboard. And so for God to bring these boils and these sores that nobody can heal is to attack this set of deities. And it's pretty bad because in verse 11 here, Exodus 9:11 says, "And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boil was upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians." So it is pretty rough. Remember, these guys at the very first were trying to keep up with the things that Jehovah was doing. They did the serpent thing, they did the blood thing, and they did the frog thing, sort of, but they couldn't make him go away. But then they gave up. They're like, I can't do this. They only did like 2.5, I guess, if you will, with their kind of fake magic, their David Copperfield level magic. Well, here it's gotten so bad they can't even stand up anymore. They've been at least standing there trying to, I guess, go head to head with Moses, if not God, and now they can't even stand because the boils are so bad. So God's kind of punishing them in a way, or showing His might to these magicians who are nothing but charlatans. So, verse 12, "And Jehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he hearkened not unto them, and as Jehovah had spoken unto Moses. And Jehovah said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith Jehovah God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, that thou mayest know that there is none like me in all the earth." So this is again God iterating to Pharaoh. You wanted to know who I am? This is who I am. I am the creator God. I made everything. I am omnipotent. This is El Shaddai, the God all-powerful. And so, verse 15, "For now I will stretch out my hand that I may smite thee and thy people with pestilence, that thou shalt be cut off from the earth," or from the land. So this pestilence is going to be, he's already cut off the cattle. And now he's going to start, he's going to finish off the food supply for Egypt. Slowly what God is doing is he is weakening the Egyptian nation and bringing the whole nation to its knees. If you'll remember, Joseph saved Egypt. God through Joseph gave him food, They had plenty of food for when the famine came, and because of God's blessing through Joseph, Egypt did very well, while all the nations around them were failing because of this famine. Well, now God's going to take all that away because of what Pharaoh attempted to do to the children of Israel, to their firstborn, or for their children, for the male child, and also for enslaving them. And so we're going to see the next few plagues just wipe out the food supply here in Egypt. So verse 16, and in very deed for this cause have I raised thee up, to show in thee my power, that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. So he says, I'm gonna cut your people off from the land, and I have allowed you to come to power. God is saying that you, Pharaoh, specifically, you as a person, I have allowed you to come to power, and I have allowed you to do all the things that you have done, so that I can show my power to the world. And this is important. Hey, Bobby. Because we're going to see in moving forward through the Old Testament and on into the New Testament, that this is the first real nation that the Israelites deal with, in terms of them being not just Abraham, not just Isaac, not just Jacob, not just these big families, but as a true nation. This is the nation that the Israelites first encounter, and kind of has this really big impact on their psyche as a nation. It's that the culture of Israel is highly impacted by this coming out of Egypt. It's so central to their identity, to go from being slaves to being free, and to go from being in the land of Goshen as just these big families, and to come onto the other side, and now they're a true nation. But they start to compare themselves to the nations around them, and Egypt is one of those. And so God does the same thing. He compares Israel to Egypt, and spiritually refers to it. He calls Israel, he calls Judah and Jerusalem later, the southern kingdom after the northern tribes are gone. He refers to them spiritually as Egypt. He's like, you are like Egypt in so many ways. And so what we see is, if you look at the 10 plagues here, a lot of what we see here also happens to the Jews in the first century. And so it's important to understand the parallel here, that where Egypt is the type, the physical nation of Egypt is the type, Israel is also a physical type. And those point to the church as the spiritual Israel, but also as physical Israel is the antitype of Egypt here, along with all the other nations that they want to be like. So pay attention to these parallels, the way that God is trying to teach Israel, don't be like these nations. Don't want to be like the people around you, because they're bad people. They want to kill the babies. They want to enslave you. They want to prevent you from worshiping me. And then we get to the first century, and what did the Jews do? Herod tries to kill the babies, trying to kill Jesus. The Jews persecute the Christians and to the point of death. They're hunting them down. Saul of Tarsus is hunting them down and bringing them to be executed. They murdered Jesus. And then they're trying to prevent the Christians from worshiping God, exactly as the Egyptians are doing here. And so there's this massive parallel. It's not incidental. It's not accident. It's a real parallel. And part of that is why Moses is writing all of this down, is to give this lesson to the Israelites, to please don't do this. Welcome aboard, John. We're in Exodus chapter 9, and so we're in verse 17. So he says, I've raised you up and allowed you to do this so that my power can be declared throughout all the earth, and yet you exalt yourself against my people. Hey, John, part of this kind of goes back to this idea of Romans 13, that there's no authority except it comes from God. God is not only the creator of the universe, the physical universe. We talk about matter, space, and time, but God is also the originator of all thought. And so this concept of authority and kings and government also comes from God. And mankind could not conceive of something like that on his own. Mankind's not capable of original thought. There's nothing that we can think of that isn't related to something that's already in existence. We are capable of taking what's there and rearranging it and putting it together in new ways. That's where technology comes from. But, the thing, just as a fantasy writer, as a science fiction writer, one of the interesting exercises that I've done over the years is, can I come up with a new species or a new creature or a new alien race or something that is unrelated to anything that already exists? And guys, I've been trying to do that for 30 years, and it's not possible. There's just not in us the ability to take out of nothing something. And so God says, I'm lifting you up, and I lifted you up to show my power in the world, but here you're taking that and you're turning it against my people. And so he says, behold, verse 18, behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such as not been seen in Egypt since the foundation thereof, even until now. Karis, sit still, please. Thank you. So verse 19, he says, send therefore now and gather thy cattle. Well, that's that word mikna again. Remember that time is passing here. This is not just, we see it in the movies, and we even read it this way here in the Bible, just boom, right after another, boom, 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 boom. But there is time passing. Days are passing, weeks are passing. And so we've already gone from the reign of cattle to the boils, and now we're to another plague. Well, by this time, the Egyptians have had enough time to gather cattle. Did they steal some from the Israelites? Probably the easiest, fastest way for them to get some cattle, to have some now for God to talk about. Did they have time to purchase some from other people? Because they didn't have any left. Remember, the reign of cattle wiped out all the Egyptian cows, all the Egyptian sheep. There was no livestock left. And so enough time has passed for them to have gathered at least a little bit. Probably Pharaoh's house is the main owner at this time, the only one with the wealth to have accumulated any significant livestock, maybe one or two wealthy merchants or whatever. But they've had enough time to gather livestock again. And so God actually is merciful here. And even though he's going to bring a plague, he gives them instruction. And he says, if you will do this, yes, I'm going to send some hail and it's going to be awful. But if you will do this, it will save lives and it will save livestock. And so he says, send therefore now and gather thy cattle and all that thou hast in the field. For upon every man and beast which shall be found in the field and shall not be brought home, the hail shall come down upon them and they shall die. He that feared the word of Jehovah among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his cattle flee into the houses. So there were some people who, they all heard the warning, and they feared Jehovah at this point. They had learned that he is a real deity, that he can do what he says, and so they listen, and they bring in all of their people, all of their servants, and all of their livestock that they've managed to gather. So verse 21, he that regarded not the word of Jehovah left his servants and his cattle in the field. Jehovah said unto Moses, stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, that's the behemoth, and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. We're also going to see a little bit of mercy here, because the hail is going to destroy some of the crops, but not all the crops. God is still, in his way, he is being long-suffering. He doesn't just completely wipe them out. If God wanted to, he could totally Thanos these guys out of existence and be like, all right, guys, you're free to go. But that's not how God works. God works with long suffering. He's ramping these things up, giving the Egyptians time to repent and to do what they're supposed to do, to not enslave the Hebrews anymore, to let them go and fulfill the promise that God had made unto them. And so he slowly brings it up, turns up the heat, hoping that they will let go in the way that God interacts with time and with mankind's free will. And so he's still going to give them a little bit of a mercy here, in that he only destroys some of the crops. All right, and so Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and Jehovah sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and Jehovah rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail, and fire mingled with the hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. Okay, that's the non-livestock. And the hail smote every herb of the field, and brake every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. Pharaoh sent and called Moses and Aaron. And now listen to this. This is a different Pharaoh now. He's starting to see that these are no longer inconveniences. These are no longer temporary things. This is it's getting real. He's already lost all the cattle, and they went and they got more, and he lost that too. And listen to how he speaks. So Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron, and said unto them, I have sinned this time. Jehovah is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Man, so at least temporarily, Pharaoh figures it out. But he's a stubborn man, so it doesn't last. Entreat Jehovah, for it is enough, that there be no more mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer. And Moses said unto him, As soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands unto Jehovah, and the thunder shall cease, neither shall there be any more hail, that thou mayest know how that the earth, the land, this land here, is Jehovah's. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that you will not yet fear Jehovah God. Moses knows Pharaoh's, as soon as the plague is gone, Moses knows Pharaoh's going to change his mind, and he tells him, he lets him know. Also note, who's speaking here? This is Moses speaking now. It's not, Aaron is there, but Moses is now stepping into his role. He's starting to do the speaking, and is taking over as leadership the way that God had intended originally, because it's Moses that God wanted to lead the Israelites. And so it's Moses that's speaking. So it says, verse 31, And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was bolder, it was in the bud. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. So God spared some of the food supply. The flax and the barley's probably more towards the fun side of things with the alcohol and whatever. So we're talking more of the luxury type foods. But wheat and rye are more staple, because those are for like bread and whatnot. And Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh, and spread abroad his hands unto Jehovah, and the thunders and hail ceased, and the rain was not poured upon the earth. And when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunders were ceased, he sinned yet more, and hardened his heart, he and his servants. So you can imagine Pharaoh, as soon as it stops, Pharaoh starts to not just harden his own heart, but he's talking to his servants. He's convincing them that, this is a temporary thing. Also, in terms of the hail, these are the gods of the sky, the Egyptian gods of the sky that are taken out. Some of these are fairly well known. Nut is the Egyptian sky goddess. She's like the big sky, like stars and outer space and the planets and the sun. All of the major heavens is what Nut is over. And then you have Isis and Seth. And Isis and Seth are the Egyptian gods of agriculture. They're the ones that are growing things and food supply and whatever. And then Shu is the Egyptian god of the atmosphere. So we talk about the sky. The sky can mean different things, or we can talk about heaven. The word heaven can mean different things. It can be the atmosphere, what we call the atmosphere, or the sky, where there's clouds and birds and stuff. And then we could call the sky or heaven outer space, what we know to be outer space and whatnot, unless you're a flat earther, and don't get me started. And then you have these two gods of the agriculture and the growing things. So that's what the hail took out. Okay, good job. So that brings us to the end of chapter 9, and we're going to get into 10 right away. It says, And Jehovah said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart. Well, remember, Pharaoh was said to have hardened his own heart. Again, it's back and forth. Back and forth. I hardened his heart. Pharaoh hardened his heart. Again, God doing this is a secondary. He's doing it through a medium. God often works through a medium. He doesn't do things directly. His will is not overwhelming to us. He created us with free will. And so when God does things, he does it through providence, or he does it through secondary action. He acts through prophets. Most of the time when we see God interacting, it's through some kind of a medium here. So it says, Go unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show these my signs before him, that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's sons what things I have wrought in Egypt. Now, I've been saying this all along. God is doing this to Egypt and allowing these things to happen in Egypt, and taking the time that he is and doing the things that he is as a lesson to the Israelites. They're the primary concern because they are the nation that is the vehicle through which God fulfills his promise to Abraham to bring Messiah into the world. And so here it is explicitly stated, I hardened his heart. Not that he did it directly, but Pharaoh's heart is hardened again, so that the Israelites will have lessons to teach their sons and their sons' sons and all of their generations until the time of the end, until the end of the Jewish state in the 1st century A.D. So here it is explicitly stated. So what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know how that I am Jehovah. So remember, Pharaoh said, I don't know who Jehovah is. Who is Jehovah? And so God is answering the question. But here, in this verse, he says that I'm doing this so that Israel will know throughout generations that I am Jehovah. So he's answering the same question, but his target audience in this case is the Israelites, because in a lot of ways they forget. Many, many times throughout their history, they forget who Jehovah really is, and he has to constantly remind them. Verse 3, And Moses and Aaron came in unto Pharaoh and said unto them, Thus saith Jehovah God of the Hebrews, How long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into thy coasts. And they shall cover the face of the land, that one cannot be able to see the earth. And they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remains unto you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which grows for you out of the field. So God was long-suffering. He left the wheat and he left the rye. And he says, but you hardened your heart again. And so I'm going to send some locusts, and I'm going to finish off your food supply if you don't let my people go. And they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of all thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day. And he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh. So there is a deity that is specific to protection from locusts, because locusts were a big problem. And so you have this Serapia, which is the Egyptian deity protector from locusts. I got a whole god. That's his whole thing. That's all he does is protects from locusts. And so whenever there's locusts starting to show up, they go sacrifice like crazy to this god so that he will protect them from locusts. That's how big of a deal this idea of locusts is. And God's like, your God, Serapia, nothing. Locusts everywhere, more than you've ever seen or ever will see again. And so he sends this plague upon them. Moses goes out from Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's servant said unto him, How long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let the men go, that they may serve Jehovah their God. Knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? So his servants are like, another one? There's going to be another plague. It's going to be locust. You can think in their mind that everything that Moses has said that Jehovah is going to do, he's done. And so the servants are like, oh, he's going to send locusts. He's going to wipe out our food supply. Do you not know that Egypt is destroyed? They knew. They knew the nation was on the brink of total collapse because of this. Because Pharaoh, their god king, remember, he's to them a deity. He is destroying the nation out of his pride. And his servants are calling him on it. Verse 8, Moses and Aaron were brought again unto Pharaoh. Now remember, he told him this. Moses came in and told him, the locusts are going to come. And then he went away. And then they were brought back. And Pharaoh, again, like I said, Pharaoh is changing slowly. Ever so slowly, you're starting to see him crack. You're starting to see him give way. Like a dam holding back water. You can just see, like in some of the movies, just the big cracks are starting to appear in the dam. So Moses and Aaron were brought again unto Pharaoh, and he said unto them, Go, serve Jehovah your God. But who are they that shall go? And Moses said, We will go with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds will we go, for we must hold a feast unto Jehovah. So they're going to take everybody, is what Moses is saying. And he said unto them, Let Jehovah be so with you, as I will let you go, and your little ones. Look to it, for evil is before you. Not so. Go now, ye that are men, and serve Jehovah. For that ye did desire, and they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. So Pharaoh's going to make a compromise. He asked, who's going to go? And Moses said, well, we're going to take everybody, young and old, boy and girl, all the cattle, everything. We're all going. And Pharaoh says, no, you leave everything here, and just the men can go. So he's trying to make a compromise, and you can see this kind of in a way with every human. You know, there's this process that we go through. You know, if we're living in sin, and lessons start coming our way through life, through providence, that at first there's just stubbornness and denial. But after a while, you know, the lessons start to sink in, and we begin to crack. And we start to make deals with God. God, if you do this, I'll do that. And that's where Pharaoh's at. Humans, there's nothing new under the sun. We haven't changed. In thousands of years, we are still the same creature. And Pharaoh is no different. You know, he is a king. He is the leader of the most powerful nation on the planet at this time. And he's just like us. He's making the same deals with God, trying to control the situation in a way that is not his to control. He doesn't have this kind of control over the situation, and so he's trying to make deals. And he drives them out. He tells them, "This is the deal I'll make. Your men can go," and then he drives them out. He doesn't let them respond. So verse 12, and Jehovah said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come upon the land of Egypt, and eat every herb of the land, even all that the hail hath left. So Jehovah, obviously, you know, this is my answer to your compromise. You know, you want to do it your way, and that's not good enough. And the same is true today. God has said, do things this way. God has given us a pattern to live by in the gospel accounts. There's a pattern. There's a pattern to the way that the church is supposed to be structured. There is a pattern to our worship. There is a pattern to how God said we are to be saved. For any of us to try to alter that pattern in any way is arrogance. To think that we are on par with God, that we can negotiate with God, is the most arrogant thing that I can think of that a man can do, is to exalt himself and set himself equal to God. You know, God says, do this. For example, God says very clearly, 1 Peter 3:21, the like figure or the antitype, immersion doth also now save you. So many people in the world say baptism doesn't have anything to do with salvation. God very clearly says that it does. Well, Are we negotiating with God? Are we, the people who say that we're saved by faith only, they're coming up with their own plan. They're saying, God, you know what? I don't like that whole immersion thing. That sounds too much like works to me. And so they try to renegotiate. And that's just arrogance. It's the an amount of hubris that is mind-boggling. God lays out what he wants and how it's supposed to be. There's no negotiation. You do it his way or it's not at all. And so Pharaoh attempts to negotiate with God, and God's answer is, you didn't do it my way, so here's some locusts. And it's just, it's amazing. Of course, this guy considers himself a god king. And so maybe he thinks he can be equal. And I think that's where we end up with the 10th plague, is because of that arrogance. But it just doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So Moses stretched forth his rod over the land of Egypt, and Jehovah brought an east wind up out of the land all that day and all that night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. And the locusts went up all over the land of Egypt, and rested in all the coasts of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them there was no such locust as they, neither after them shall be such. For they covered the face of the whole earth, so that the land was darkened. And they did eat every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left. And there remained not any green thing in the trees or in the herbs of the field through all the land of Egypt. Their food was gone. We make ourselves gods when we want to make good with God on our terms, but that's in step with a culture that defies men. That's in step with the culture that so what you're saying is just the kind of iterating what I said here is that trying to make God meet us on our terms is defiance to him, is what that is. If we're not going to do it God's way, if you're not for me, you're against me, kind of a thing. I agree with that. Oh, that deifies. Okay, yes, that makes more sense. So that lifts us up, that exalts ourselves to be like God, to be on equal authority. So yeah, I agree 100%. To try to make ourselves out to be on par with God and authority and power, and try to say that we can make the rules, or we can negotiate the contract, or we can renegotiate the terms somehow. It doesn't work that way. God is creator. He is the one who made all of us and everything, and it is on his terms if we want to come to him. That is the only way to him, is to come to him on his terms, and he does not renegotiate. It's for when he laid out his plan of salvation from the creation of the world. We know that was the plan from the creation of the world, that these are the terms of salvation for mankind. You do it his way, or you're not. Yeah, our terms is a no-go. That's exactly right. So anyway, for they covered the face of the whole earth, so the land was dark, and they ate everything, took out all the herbs. So the food supply is gone, verse 15. Now listen to this. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste. In haste, he called for them. I gotta hear real quick. See, there's this locust thing, and this is the Egyptian psyche that's kind of being attacked here. This is a big cultural impact on them, because locusts were a bad thing for them, and they knew it. And so Pharaoh sent them out saying, you can take the men and go worship God. That's the last communication that they had. And then all of a sudden, here are these locusts, and Pharaoh's like, oh, no, call them back real quick. So that is the essence of humanism: man first, the rest of existence second. Oh, yeah. Including God in the rest of that. Yeah, absolutely. That is the epitome of humanism. So Pharaoh calls for Moses and Aaron in haste, and he said, I have sinned against Jehovah your God and against you. Like Moses and Aaron have any real power or anything here. But he's like, I've sinned against you. So remember, Pharaoh's already said this once. It's starting, the dam is cracking a little bit more. Now therefore forgive, I pray thee, my sin, only this once, and entreat Jehovah your God that he may take away from me this death only. So he's like, look, just this one time, give me one more chance. Just take this one thing away from me, and I'll let your people go. Just take these locusts away, because the locusts are awful. for the Egyptians. So, and he went out from Pharaoh, this is Moses, and he entreated Jehovah, and Jehovah turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locust, and cast them into the Red Sea. There remained not one locust in all the coast of Egypt. So God listens. Pharaoh says, I've sinned, forgive me, please. God says, okay. He takes away the locusts. But Jehovah hardened Pharaoh's heart, so that he would not let the children of Israel go. And Jehovah said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven. Now, Moses doesn't go back to Pharaoh this time. Pharaoh just doesn't let the children of Israel go. After the locust gone, Pharaoh's like, nope, never mind, changed my mind again. And so Jehovah just tells Moses, don't even go talk to him. Just do this. Stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. You ever been in that kind of darkness? I'll tell you what. I went down to the Carlsbad Cavern when I was a lot younger with my family. When you get down there to the very bottom, they don't have any lights. Everybody's like got flashlights and stuff. Well, they had the lights, like there were indirect lighting and stuff, and everybody had flashlights and stuff. When they get you down there, they sit you down. There's these little places to sit. They say sit down. You have to sit down. And turn off all your flashlights. No lights, no cell phones, nothing. And then they turn off all the indirect lighting. And that darkness is so thick you can feel it. Oh, it is so dark. Like there's this absoluteness, and they say be quiet, don't say anything. It is so quiet that you hear the drip, 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 and you hear people's heartbeats. And as time passes, because they do it for a little bit, as the time passes, you can hear those heartbeats speeding up. It is so yeah, you can't see your hand in front of your face. So when it says that there was darkness in all the land that they could feel, that is thick darkness. And the interesting thing here, this is the last major plague before the big one. You know, it's an awesome and terrible, terrifying experience. If darkness is not your thing, don't do that. Don't do that part of the tour, because I'm telling you, I felt like I needed a chainsaw to cut through that darkness, because it was so bad. Anyway, we have darkness. What are the gods that are attacked? Ra. Ra is the sun god. He is like the epitome of Egyptian gods. He is the powerhouse. He is their symbol of authority, and Pharaoh is his son, and all of the worship ultimately culminates in a worship of Ra. And then you have Amun-Ra and Aten and Atum and Horus. And then you even have Thoth, the Egyptian moon god. These are all the sun gods and the moon god and all the gods that provide that natural light to humans. And these had the most worship out of all of the Egyptian gods. And Jehovah doesn't mess around. He doesn't even send Moses to warn them. He just says, he hardened his heart again. Darkness, do it. And that's like, you're attacking the biggest, baddest Egyptian god there is. And no warning. And he's already freaked out because of the locusts. Remember, the locusts were a big bad thing already. So that was a big attack there. And now Ra himself is being shown to be powerless before Jehovah God. Verse 22, and Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. Wow. Wonder where we read about that again. 3 days of darkness. Oh yeah, not a single response, because they're fake. They're wood and stone and precious metals. They're made by the hands of men. And if they are made by the hands of men, the cause, law of cause and effect, cause is always superior to the effect. If man made these so-called gods, man is superior to these gods. And there's no way man can stop any of this. So certainly not going to have the gods do it. They're not gods. They're fake gods. And so that's what Jehovah is really saying. Look, I am the one true and living God. Look what I can do. I have command over all creation. Everything that you worship, you've divided it out into your little pantheon and everything. I command it all. And you can't do anything about it. So for 3 days, there's darkness. Can you imagine being at the bottom of Carlsbad? No flashlight. Maybe you only brought, because that's what they tell you. If you ever go cave diving or whatever, take multiple flashlights with batteries in them. Don't take one flashlight with multiple batteries, because if you drop your flashlight, that's it. It's gone. And so can you imagine being down there for, I couldn't do it a day. But imagine being down there for 3 days with no light, trying to find your way out. There wasn't anywhere these guys could go. It was throughout the entire land except for Goshen. They couldn't go anywhere, and they're not going to go to the Hebrews. They're afraid of Jehovah at this point. They saw not one another. That's verse 23. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. The Egyptians were in total darkness, so that they were afraid to leave their house. They couldn't see each other. It was so dark. And there was a mess to clean up for sure. Absolutely. I can imagine, we're hunkered down now a little bit with this COVID stuff, but we can at least see each other. We can get out and enjoy the sunshine, which is highly recommended. But these guys, there's no sight. The number one sense that humans use is sight. We can't see anything. They didn't want to move for 3 days. Can you imagine them stumbling around to eat, drink, and go to the bathroom? Is about all they were going to do for 3 whole days in absolute pitch darkness. This isn't just an eclipse. This isn't just they had to light some candles, or they had to light some bonfires. When you look at the darkness in the movies, I know for certain in the Charlton Heston movie, but also I think in Prince of Egypt, when the darkness comes, it's like the sun and the stars and the moon don't shine. But they light some torches and stuff, and that's all. They just deal with it for 3 days. That's not what the Bible says. This is darkness that you can feel. Torches weren't going to do squat. You can build a fireplace all you want. You probably burn yourself trying to do it. But you couldn't still see. The darkness was that thick. It was a supernatural darkness that he might as well have just struck them all blind, and it would have been the same effect. This darkness was external, so there was no self. There wasn't anything that they could even think to do about it, because they couldn't control. How do you control darkness? It's just an absence of light, and this absence of light was everywhere, and there isn't anything that they could have done to mitigate it to even a little degree. They could not see each other, just absolutely devoid of light. That is exactly right, Brian. So for 3 days, they hunker down and they don't move. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, "Go ye, serve Jehovah. Only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you." God just took out the number one deity in Egypt, and he's still trying to negotiate. He's letting a little more. He's like, all right, all the little ones can go, but you got to leave your livestock. And Moses said, "Thou must also give us sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto Jehovah our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not a hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve Jehovah our God. And we know not with what we must serve Jehovah until we come there." So Moses is saying, we got to take them all, because we don't know what, God hasn't told us yet what we have to sacrifice. If he wants us to sacrifice all of them, then we got to take all of them so we can sacrifice all of them, and he'll tell us when we get there. But Jehovah hardened Pharaoh's heart. So Moses, by these words, he's like, nope, no deal. Pharaoh, not taking a deal. We got to do it all or nothing. And so Pharaoh's heart is hardened yet again. Pharaoh said unto him, "Get thee from me, take heed to thyself. See my face no more, for in that day that thou seest my face, thou shalt die." So Pharaoh's like, get out of here. I don't want to see you again. If I see you again, it's a death sentence for you. So Moses said, "Thou hast spoken well. I will see thy face again no more." So Moses is like, "You're right. You're not going to see me again. I won't see you." And that's the end of it. 9 plagues. All of the gods are defeated. And the worst is yet to come because of Pharaoh's pride, of his stubbornness, of his unwillingness. He knows now who Jehovah is. Jehovah is the God of gods, the one true and living God, the one God that commands all of creation, completely overthrew every Egyptian deity that existed. And yet he's still holding on, trying to make deals, trying to set terms, trying to retain some kind of control over the situation. He's not coming to God on God's terms. Okay, Pharaoh Burger King, have it your way. Nice. I like it. So, and this is just this lesson here. You know, we hear about the 10 plagues as kids. We read about them. We memorize them. We get this simplified version of them, rightfully so, because we're just kids, right? You know, we're in elementary school, and maybe we talk about it a little bit in junior high and high school, and so we get a surface understanding. But when you really dig down deep into what's going on here, the power and sovereignty of God and the pride of Pharaoh is just it's mind blowing. Hey Melville, welcome. You caught us at the end. You're gonna have to catch us on the rewind here. But it's mind blowing. Here you have a deity that this is his calling card. This is his introduction. You want to know who I am? You've enslaved my people. You've murdered their children. And you want to know who I am? This is who I am. I am the God that is capable of completely and totally destroying your entire pantheon because they're nothing. And you want to make deals with me? No deal. You do it my way or I will destroy you. And here's the interesting thing. We're going to see this in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. God tells the Israelites the same thing. Here are my terms. And if you do it on my terms, I will bless you and I will multiply all of your children and your cattle and your wealth, and you will have power in the earth, and you will be a great, great nation. But you worship me. You do things my way. But if you don't, I will end you. I will bring upon you all the plagues that I brought on Egypt. I will destroy you. I will make you slaves again, and it will be the end of you. And what did Israel do over and over and over again? They didn't get the lesson. Yeah, I think at the beginning, Brian, I think that's the case. Pharaoh, and in fact, I talk about this when I talk about where did electricity get started? Who discovered electricity? And I talk about the Temple of Dendera, which was the wise men's temple, and they found some stuff there that looks kind of like electricity and light bulbs and stuff. And you can imagine when the peasant comes in to present his offering to Pharaoh. Pharaoh's supposed to be this god king. Pharaoh stands up to greet him, and suddenly there's this divine glow behind him. Well, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all light. So if they had electricity and they're turning on the lights behind Pharaoh to get this effect going, the peasant doesn't know anything about that. So they kneel down and they're bowing, and it's God. And so Pharaoh knows it's all smoke and mirrors. Yeah, 1-watt batteries. But he knows. He knows that it's fake. In fact, he turns to his magicians at the beginning. He's like, this guy's a charlatan. Can you do this? Show him that I know that he's faking it. And so the magicians do the first couple of times, right? I think you're absolutely right. And I think Pharaoh knows exactly that, and the magicians know that this is exactly, all of it is just made up for them to hold on to their power and hold on to their control over the people. And sadly, throughout history, man has used religion in a bad way to hold power over people because they're doing it on man's terms. Whenever religion is on man's terms, man corrupts it. And man turns it into something that it was never meant to be. God is the authority. Jesus is king. And that goes into, you can talk about the Catholics and the Pope. You can talk about any centralized religion. You can talk about Islam. Pick one. And in every case, it's always a corruption, always a power grab. But if you look at the way that the church was designed in the first century, the way God set it up to be, with autonomous congregations, with a plurality of elders in authority, so that no one man could put themselves up over and change things, that they all had checks and balances against each other. So you have a way that God has set it up so that man doesn't come into power like that. So, and we'll talk more about that pattern as we go through. So, but that's a very good point, Brian. All religion is false in one way or the other. I will accept that with one caveat, Brian. All religions but one. Logically, there must be one. God talks about there is a true religion. I believe that he has a religion that is a true religion. And when we say the word, a lot of people are like, I'm not worried about religion, I'm worried about relationship. Well, that's a catchphrase. It's a silly idea. A religion is just a faith system. It's a set of patterns or a specific way that a particular faith operates and is set up. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what God did. He set up one religion under Moses. The Jewish system was a theocracy. It was a physical nation that had some spiritual implications, and there were certain things that they needed to do to set up those types pointing forward. But ultimately, God set up a different kingdom. Daniel 2 talks about that I will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. And he says, I'm going to do it in that fourth empire, which we know to be the Roman Empire. And that kingdom is the church. So there's nothing wrong with the idea of religion. But I will agree that every other religion, except for that one under the New Testament, is a false religion. So, okay, yeah, it's 10:30. I've gone my hour. So it's time for my little one to get to bed. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. If you got something out of this, please share. Love having you guys on board to listen and to ask these questions and make these great points and stuff. Really, really thoroughly enjoying this, and it's going so fast. I never thought that this would seem to go so fast, but it is. So, again, thank you, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night.